My name is Tawanga Tembo. I was born and raised here in Malawi, but I did my schooling up to primary school here, and then I moved to Zimbabwe where I did my high school. But my professional training for my first degree, I did it in Australia, which was a hospitality and tourism degree. And then I worked in the industry for about 10, 15 years in and around the world. Came back to Malawi. I was at Sanctuary Lodge and had a little business of my own as well. And then from there, I kind of figured I wanted to go into academics. Then I went to Mzuzu University, was teaching there for a while, got an opportunity to go and do a master's in culinary and specializing the culinary field, of course, so in Switzerland and France. Right now, I am at Bangkok University. I am a lecturer and an instructor in the School of Humanities and Tourism, and the program is Culinary Arts and Design. Cafe, and also did a little bit of catering for the business in and around Lilongwe. So it was mostly cakes and pastries at Area 10. Maybe some of you might have come across it. It was called Tasamori Kitchens. And then we ran it for, I think, about 4 to 5 years before I moved. At the time, they didn't have a culinary program, so I was teaching in hospitality and tourism. And part of the opportunity going to overseas to do culinary is because they were looking to introduce a culinary program. So I got an opportunity to be able to go and do a master's in culinary arts and design. And I just simplest way I can. Right now I'm based in Bangkok, Thailand. The reason I actually came back after the training, but I think it's a little bit more complicated, and just to be fair on both sides, I guess it didn't work out. That's the simplest way I can put it. And after a year, I graduated, came back, and then after a year of being back at Mzuzu University, and things weren't working out the way that I hoped they would, that's why I decided to go outside and kind of like maybe give myself an opportunity to be able to practice a little bit more, see what the world had to offer, because at this stage I had done and worked in Europe, America, that's North America, USA, but the only continent now I'm left to do is South America. So I thought, let me also try Asia, because Asia, you know, the culinary giants like Thailand, which is where I'm based. You have Korea, Japan, that are doing very well in the culinary scene. So I decided to go to those parts for me to be able to learn a little bit more about food and enrich myself. Got into the kitchen. I would say we have similarities in some ways. It could either be that we're using the same ingredients, but then they're being used slightly different, or that could be the application of it, the way that we cook the ingredients, the way that we treat them, and even down to the way that we consume those different ingredients can be slightly different. So I'll give you an example, which was something that I thought was quite funny. In Thailand, they also have guavas. But the difference is that the variety of guavas that they have more of the fibrous part than we do here. And so they don't actually eat the middle seeded part. They only eat the outer part. And so when I got into the kitchen and I was working with someone who was making a fruit salad, and when they're doing the guava, they kept throwing away the seeds. So I thought, what are you doing? And they say to me, well, in Thailand, we don't eat the seeded part because we believe it's going to break your teeth. And I thought, my whole life I've been eating these things. My teeth are perfectly fine. What are you talking about, you know? So it was quite interesting, which is why I'm saying that food is kind of similar. And also I think because of travel, because of migration of people, and also even down to, if we look at colonialism, how it's affected the different parts of the world and the food that we eat, how we eat it, how we consume it. Those would be all interplays that will change, and kind of like maybe food is always changing over time and what we eat. And so, yeah, it is similar in some ways, but also different in other ways. So the guava example is one example, and also even mangoes, green mangoes. I love green mangoes. Growing up, I ate a lot of green mangoes, but it was usually with salt and chili, and you'd cut it up like chips. I don't know, maybe some of you might relate to this. And then you put salt and a bit of chili, tabola. And when I went to Thailand, they do the same, except they don't use salt, they use sugar. So it was interesting to see that it's the same application, but they do sugar, chili, and a pinch of salt in it. So the same concept. So again, as I was saying, when people migrate, move, they bring those ideas, they share their culture through and where they are, wherever it is that they're going. Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, does it taste good? Like the one that's got sugar?
It tastes good. It's been something that I think because a lot of the times in Africa, we don't have this sweet chili or sweet and sour kind of mixture when we're cooking. So it's a taste that takes time for you to get used to it. But once you get used to it, it's actually pretty good. So it was okay. It's okay. But I'll stick to our way of doing things, which is salt and chili. Sounds better.
Yeah. So what is Malawian food and how would you describe Malawian?
Okay. Malawian food. I think this is also a question that I'm kind of asking myself to kind of try and describe it. It sounds very simple and easy probably to ping. So I think Malawian's food, and I guess maybe the way that I would describe Malawian food would be that it's a bit of an eclectic cuisine in the sense that we are drawing inspiration from the many cultures that we're coming into contact with. And if we had to look at it on a pure sense of what Malawian cuisine is, I think we'd have to look at more what the rural Malawi eats, because that has got less influence from the outside world. While the urban Malawi is a little bit more very eclectic and fusion, a lot of influences coming in. So you have people eating obviously burgers, pizzas, and that sort of thing, pastas, which are all pastas. You think about the pasta, that's Italian food, that's influence coming in there. And even if you think about, about yourself, when you say, we've got visitors, we want to cook a nice breakfast for them, a lot of the times it's going to be sausages, maybe some bacon, if you're lucky, and baked beans and stuff like that, which is very British. So we have obviously the British influence coming in there. Recently I went to a wedding and I found there was biryani, which is an Indian dish. So there's all these influences that are coming in and kind of like reshaping the Malawian food. But obviously when you talk about Malawian food, in a sense, we're thinking of nsima, stews, masamba, and if you look at it from a perspective of historically what we ate was very much grain-based, and it was also things like legumes, so beans, lentils, that sort of stuff. That was usually the things that we were eating in our diet. So it's also something that personally I'm taking a concerted effort to learn about a little bit more and try and find out a little bit more about Malawian food in itself. But if, as in a simplest way, I guess we would say nsima, stews, and vegetables. Yeah. That I have is there is an interplay between food and culture, because food is the way that we consume, the way that we eat, and so therefore each tribe per se, or each community is going to have a certain way in which they prepare the food and the way that they consume the food. So that is a part and a basic main part or integral of what our culture is. And the way I would look at it, I think it's one of the simplest ways that we can share a piece of ourselves with other people, by sharing our food, the way we prepare it, the way that we eat it, and the way that we consume it. So definitely there is an interplay in that sense between food and culture. The way that it's a part of our identity, and maybe this is why sometimes as well you find that people that are in diaspora would, when they're traveling back to wherever it is that they're based from, and I do that as well, I'll get a few things that I like from here, from home, that are comforts that I wouldn't usually find maybe wherever it is that I am. So I'll make sure that I have some of that with me, because it is a part of who I am, a part of my identity, and so therefore this is why we would be able to, we would take those particular things. So it does make up quite a big chunk of our culture, but again, as I said, it's the simplest way for you to be able to kind of like share your identity or a piece of yourself And if you're around people that maybe are interested, they will definitely be inquisitive about how you prepared the food, how you made the food. And so I mentioned earlier that obviously I was born here, but did part of my schooling in Zimbabwe. And I have family in Zimbabwe, and I was making, we made tolilo. So sweet potato leaves, and you add some tomatoes and lemon in it. They just cook it without it. And so this was, again, an exchange of culture. For them, having the addition of the lemon was something different, was something new. It was like, oh, this is how you cook it. So we're sharing culture. And obviously, by me doing that, that means then they'll probably start doing that. Then that goes on, and it's shared, and it's shared. So you're sharing your culture in that sense. And I think it can also bring a sense of pride to an individual to say, I'm sharing a piece of myself, I'm sharing a piece of who I am, the traditions that we have around food, whether it be the way that we prepare the food or the way that we consume the food. So that is definitely a piece of culture in the sense that it's a big part of culture because it makes up who we are.
Okay. So what I really like about what you shared here, Tomba, is that you're talking about a sense of like relevance to oneself, a sense of dignity to oneself. Now, I want to now talk about the monetary side, which I'm glad you started with the other part because I do think the monetary side is secondary. It is secondary, yes, but it is quite important still, right? So I wanted to know if you think food plays a part in tourism. And do you think that food can play a significant part in tourism? Or is it more? I would
say is coriander. Food can definitely be a part of tourism and can even be a reason why people travel to a place if done correctly. Because again, part of the reason that a lot of people travel and go to different places because they want to experience different cultures. They want to be able to be a part of a different culture, see how that plays out. And so food also is another way that you can express yourself. In Thailand, they have this thing that you can sort of like go to a cooking class where you do Thai cuisine, Thai food, and you learn how to cook. They teach you about the ingredients, what are the basic ingredients that you need, how you use them. And so again, as I said at the beginning, that it does have a very much like, it brings a sense of pride to be able to share those little nuggets that are probably slightly different to other places. Again, another interesting thing that I noticed, like coriander, US, I think they would say, what is it again? Oh, now I forget, sorry. Obviously, they always like to have different terms for everything else. So coriander, I'll remember, I'm sure how they refer to it. So coriander, for instance, most of the world uses the green part, the leafy part. But in Thailand, they use the root part for them to be able to make the paste and everything else like that. So that's slightly different. And in their culture, they believe that that's the part that's got a lot more flavor, but it can definitely bring in money. You can book in some countries food tours, whereby they take you, you go see how they prepare street food, what are the different dishes that they have in terms of street food. So obviously people have to pay for those activities, so it can bring economic, it can bring money into the country forex that people can be able to use it. But on the most basic level, as you mentioned, people definitely, if you go for tourism, you have to eat somewhere. And it's always nice to experience something different to what you're basically used to. And you'll find cilantro. Okay. So Americans love to say cilantro. The rest of the world says coriander. That would have disappeared. Kuchumbali is just tomatoes, onion, salad. But you can add other variations where you, and chili, sorry. And then the other variations that whereby you add the lemon. And then you can add some coriander leaves as well at the end to make it look nicer. But I think here, for the most part, when you go on Chiwaya, on street food, they'll usually just have the tomatoes just roughly chopped up with some onions, some of the chili mixed in, and then it's served with your indigenous food, definitely. There's a lot more that we can do in order for us to be able to promote our local cuisine. The big hotels do have like maybe a special day out of the week where they're showcasing Malawian food. And I think a day is not quite enough. Maybe they don't have the volumes to be able to sell it. Maybe that's why, because finances also obviously play a big role in somebody, and having an incentive for one to be able to obviously do that. But I think it's a great way for us to showcase a part of our culture, a part of who we are. Sadly, for the most part, and I think I'll go back on this one, and that's my personal opinion. Some people might agree with it, others maybe might not agree. But also I've seen some literature that has been written on this to say that the sad thing with us Africans, and Malawians included, is that we relegate a lot of our culture and indigenous ways to a more inferior position. And we put more emphasis and more value on Western things, even in the simplest way. If you look at the way that we talk about things, you know, if something is nice, it's new, it's exciting, ooh, zachizungu, you know. If it's something that's not so great, not so nice, oh, zachimits, you know. So already the way that we conversate, the way that we talk about things, we're already putting it down. And you find, and no offense to anyone, you find that there are people that are in this country, were born in this country, don't partake of our local cuisine, or their children don't know their local cuisine. And so we'll find ourselves at some stage whereby that would have disappeared and we don't have, you know, a food or our own culture. And I say this also because I compare with Asian countries. There is no way that you're going to find an Asian eating anything other than their cuisine. They love their cuisine, they relish their cuisine, they relish their culture. They're always happy to be able to share with you. They're always happy to be able to showcase their culture, to make sure that, you know, people, when you come in, this is how we do things. And for us, we're so happy to give up our way of life, our way of doing things. I think maybe colonialism plays a part in that. I don't want to get political, but it definitely does, because we kind of put everything as inferior. And so therefore, not looked at so great, but if I eat spaghetti, pizza, or burger, yeah, awesome. But the indigenous food does, and there's a lot of research that has been done to prove that indigenous food actually, in some cases, has got more nutritional value than some of these foods that we're eating from Western cultures that we're sort of trying to mimic and don't even make great imitations. I think it's better for us to be originals, relish what we do. That's not to say I'm going to love everything about Malawian cuisine. There could be certain things that I don't like about Malawian cuisine, and that's okay. But whatever it is that is good, let's sort of like hold on to it, document it for future generations to be able to kind of use it. And tourism is one of those ways that can promote that idea, because there's a financial incentive in that sense, that for us to be able to kind of like put together and hold on to these particular culture, to be able to hold on to the recipes, document it. A lot of been on this journey trying to read a little bit more about Malawian cuisine, and a lot of the times the books that are written from a foreigner's perspective, and it's foreigners writing our stories instead of us writing our own stories and documenting these things from our perspective. And so definitely, I mean, there's room for improvement. There's better ways that we could do it. I have maybe food shows, food festivals that highlight what is good about our food, and it also helps us to be able to improve on it, make it better. Because I think the other thing as well is the fact that the way that we consume food is slightly different. It's maybe on the most basic level. Most Malawians, the biggest population is in rural Malawi. Very little is in the urban Malawi. And so for that reason, for the most part, if we have to look at the numbers, we're eating for sustenance. We're not eating for leisure. So the way that we're going to present the food is also going to be different, because if I'm just eating to fill my tummy, I don't really care what it looks like, because the most basic thing is that I want to fill my tummy. And then after that, then I can look at, okay, how do I present it differently? And there's actually a Zimbabwean author, Tsitsi Damba, I think is her name. She wrote a book on this, and where she was talking, it's not about food, but she talked about and referred to food to say, because when we eat it for sustenance, we're not really bothered too much about what it looks like. We want more for it to taste good and fill our tummy. That's a basic priority. Yeah. I think, one, we can showcase ourselves, push for a space. And obviously, if we can't get that, and it's an opportunity for myself and others that are in the food industry to be able to create our own table, to be able to now start to showcase and to be able to show the world what Africa is. And I think also the other thing is, like, a lot of the times Africa is thought of as one entity. And so because we're thought of as one entity, having also one identity, but we're so different based on where you're coming from. When I talk about the cuisine, I mentioned briefly about colonization. That also changes depending on who colonized us. The food is kind of similar in those particular instances. The trade routes that were happening, also that would be different. So the spices that we use. Here in Malawi, I remember growing up, we didn't use a lot of spices. You know, it was very plain, which is very British, you know. But right now, I'm happy to come back and to see that on the shelves, there's different varieties of nalis, there's different sauces that are coming up, different spices that people are embracing and using in the food. So food will evolve over time, depending on the people that we come into influence with, the ingredients that we're exposed to. But again, we kind of have to hold on to what is the essence of who we are at the core. So that could be the methods that we use, the cooking methods that we're using, or the way that we're treating the ingredients, or even simply just the type of ingredients that we're using that are maybe just in our part of the world and are not in another part of the world. But definitely there's a lot that needs to be done for us to be represented on the world stage. You mentioned Morocco. I think when I think of African food and looking at on the world stage, Morocco food definitely is showcased. Nigerian is also coming up. There's a lot of articles, a lot of things that are happening with Nigerian food. South African food, but South African food again is also quite eclectic. They have influence from the Dutch, from the Indians, and then India, they have also quite a lot in that sense. So they're also being showcased a little bit, but definitely there's a lot more that could be done. When you think of Northern Africa, because it's so similar to the Arab nations, they are put together with MENA. So Middle Eastern and African food is kind of put in one category, and then the rest of Africa in a separate category, simply because obviously they have more similarities with the Arab nations than they do with the rest of Africa, Southern Africa. So these are some of the things that we definitely need to push and maybe also create spaces. And this is something obviously for a start, even if it starts with small things like this, to be able to have people to come in and showcase local cuisine. So obviously this was just a simple one, kuchimbali, that we're doing here, that usually you're gonna find, probably I should have put a bit more onion in there because it is an onion and tomato salad. But these are some of the things that you will find most of Southern Africa. But again, there's a lot of influences that are coming in there. So fighting for our place, yes, definitely that needs to happen. Creating our own spaces, that also needs to happen. And those people, myself and others that are in the spaces working as professionals in food industry, we also need to take up those mentors and be able to go up and to be able to showcase our food to other people. The world might not necessarily come to us and say, hey, what do you have? But it's also up to us to say, hey, we have this, and this is what we have, to be able to be represented in those spaces. I think maybe one of the most important things I would want to add to the conversation is us embracing our culture, who we are. And part of that culture, obviously, is the food aspect, the way that we dress, the way that we eat. Okay, I'm saying food again because it's staying in my head. So embracing our culture so that we don't lose our sense of identity in the mix of it. And this little things so that, you know, future generations can have something to say, hey, look, this is what our culture is all about. This is what is good about my country, and to be able to share with others. And yes, I challenge those people in the industry. Let's work together, create spaces to be able to promote our food, to be able to promote our culture to the world. I think if we start shouting on top of our voices, the world can't help it but take notice at some point. I mean, with music, it's happening. You can see it. People are dancing to African music, you know, celebrating African instruments and all those sort of things. And that's because people kept putting it out there until people took notice. And I think it's time as well we did the same with food, because it has the potential to be able to expose ourselves to other things, to be able to have tourists come in, enjoy a different type of cuisine, but also for us to elevate our cuisine in such a way that people can come and be able to enjoy it as well. So here I was just making for you some kachumbali. I think a lot of people, when they go to Chiwaya, you just say kasaladi. So simple one, just tomato, onions, and a bit of chili. So obviously when you're eating it little bit of salt on there, and it goes with your kachiwaya. So here we go, very simple, straightforward. There we go. And as I mentioned at the beginning, my name is Tawanga. I am based in Thailand, and I'm open to collaborations with like-minded people, people that want to be able to showcase our culture, to be able to showcase our food, using food obviously as the model to be able to showcase that. And also just wanted to say thank you very much for inviting me and making me a part of this conversation. It's something that I'm very passionate about, and hope to see that, you know, we embrace our culture a little bit more, that we pass on to the next generation so that we still have a sense of identity in this world. And I think when you show up in the world with your unique self, you know, this is the best way for you to be able to show up with something different and to be able to stand out from the world. But if we raise our culture, our sense of identity, then we come out as these imitations that are not so great. And I hope we can all embrace who we are, the good parts and those that we need work on, look at ways in which we can improve, elevate them, and make them better, whether it be with food or anything else of that sort. So again, based in Thailand, but if you want to reach out, you can obviously reach out. And my contacts, I'm sure they'll share at some point. Thank you.